Hi, everybody, and welcome to Hell is for Children. This show is on every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is 2100 hours Central European Time. My name is Geerte Frenken, and this show is all about the topic of protective mothers and their children. So, what's a protective mother? A protective mother tries to protect her child or children from their abusive fathers by many means necessary, which is an uphill battle in today's global corrupt family court system that thrives on paternal entitlement. And today's guest is domestic violence survivor and protective mother Radhika Pochampally, who lost custody of her two children to her abusive ex due to false allegations of parental alienation syndrome. And I want to welcome Radhika to the show. Thank you for joining me today on Hells for Children, Radhika. And as always, it is a pleasure to have my guests on because it takes so much bravery and courage to share a personal story in public. And as we were just chatting before the show started, it seems like all our cases are scripted along the same pattern. So your case is almost a typical case where you got accused of parental alienation syndrome. So why don't you take us, from the start of your story and tell us how you became a protective mother?
Thank you, Geerte, for having me on the show. Before I start about me and my story, I would like to extend kudos to you. You are the reason I've taken up on a journey to talk about my story and come out, if you will, of the shell that we normally create as one, as domestic violence victims, and two, the shame associated that comes from both from paternal entitlement and an aspect of cultural upbringing. And I've watched a couple of your videos or interviews through the common friends, and that motivated me to get
Well,
out of
that's
the
good to hear.
shell and feel that, it's not my fault.
That's right. That's a
And
very
I
important
have
point to make.
nothing to be ashamed of.
That's
And,
right.
uh, and it took me a little while of contemplation and a little while of being comfortable with the thought of having my name associated with the family court crisis. Um, so thank you. You're doing a fantastic job, quite commendable. Having read your story, it only gives me a lot more courage, and I'm hoping that through this interview, I can encourage other women to come out and talk about that story so we can band together to completely eradicate this craziness that's out in the family courts, which if you look at it very high level, it is so uncivilized, and it's something you don't associate with civilized and understanding societies. So thank you one more time. Going forward about me, I am born and raised in India, and I came to United States to pursue my PhD. Soon after, went back to India, got married to my ex-husband, and brought him here as my dependent. He had just completed his medical school a few years before that in India, and after coming here as my dependent, he had taken the exams and got through the residency and fellowship. Um, and but this is where my story started. Is shortly after our wedding is all the story and all the issues of violence unfolded. if you can understand the cultural aspect of it, in India, you don't get married to one person, which is everywhere. In general, it is true. But the involvement of family is a lot more. Um, and there's also a concept of dowry, the unspoken but existential concept of dowry, um, that has its own poisonous effects on a marital relationship. So that started soon after my wedding, even when I was in India. Didn't come back to US yet. But slowly but surely, the control started. Very shortly after coming back to US, any of my guy friends have become my boyfriends, and any of my friends are not welcome if he is not respected. The typical controlling relationship. Um, it was only his friends were our friends. It's pretty much within a short time, a few years. Uh, I had very few connections of my own. The only connections were my immediate family. That too at a very secretive level, not a very public level. He knew I was in contact, but it was my side of the story. So that's how it did. And by the time I got pregnant with our first child, he had just about finished his entrance exams for a residency, and he was about ready to start residency, which was in 2001. I got married in 97. Um, and that's when actually the physical and aggressive abuse started. As it is typically shown in sociopathic behavior, that when your wife is pregnant is when the abuse increases. Which is all,
Yes.
of course, I say all this as an afterthought, because at that point, I didn't even believe that I would get abused. It took me 2 to 3 years of intense therapy with domestic violence expert therapist that's also aware of the cultural aspects, to accept that someone like me can also be abused and actually be the abuse effects were so severe in me that not only denial, I've also already gone to the end of uh, being associated with the abuser. Stockholm syndrome. I was diagnosed with that, Stockholm
Wow.
syndrome. So apart from PTSD and everything, but I was diagnosed with Stockholm syndrome. So so that's and of course, so the other thing that added on is there was a correlationship between his increase in abuse incidents with his affairs. So every time he became very, very abusive to me, which is usually when I'm pregnant, or just as any other time, when your victim is the most vulnerable position at time, is when you become more aggressive, the abusers become more aggressive. And then the affairs. So I have known of at least 3 affairs, at least 3, known as in I have strong evidence. I either met them or have uh, known of it, and of course court records or what have you. So these are, and then the relationships that I don't know how many he had. Um, but the things got really bad when I was pregnant the second time. It's funny, I have to give you humorous incidents here just to make it lighter. Um, so right after our divorce, we had a deposition for property. And as my lawyer was exploring the possibility of how much money he would have spent on his baby mama, He asked, do you know this baby mama? I'm going to just call her Shelly. It's not her original name. I will try not to use anybody's names. If anyone's interested in my case, they can investigate and find out. It's not very difficult. My name is my name. This is that my original name.
Mm-hmm.
So who do you identify? Do you recognize Shelly? And he goes, who is Shelly? So my lawyer goes, oh, Shelly, you're paying child support to? He goes, I don't know. I don't keep track of any of it because it goes automatically. But you don't know who Shelly is, right? He says, no. And then my lawyer goes, but you have a child with her. And he goes, well, I didn't have sex with her. But you have a child with her. No, I didn't have sex with her. All right,
That's
let's go to my client.
immaculate conception there.
No. Well, this is even more interesting. I'm actually my lawyers they're not my lawyers any longer, but they still make fun of me. I have a great relationship with them. They were not the typical family court lawyers. I hired them off the law clinic because I needed somebody urgently. Um, Anyhow, so it comes into the topic goes to me and he asks, so how many children do you have with her? And he goes, well, it's the same as Shelley, I only had sex with her one time. And my lawyer goes, okay, you're the doctor here. I am not. Are you telling me you had uh, sex with my client one time over the 10 years you were together, and you had two children, 2.5 years apart? And he goes, well, yeah, I'm good that way. That came out later. That was off the record, but what it goes off to is to say that um, he is partly right in the sense that the first time is probably when we actually had a child regularly, but later on things have got deteriorated so much that on a hindsight and later I've learned that in a non-traditional form or current form, it will be recognized as marital rape. Which is, of course, as when you're in the relationship and when you're part of the culture that is treated women as, we are raised by a teaching that your husband's your God. That's what he's called, Pativrata. Your husband, Pati Devo. Pati is husband, Devo is God. So that's how you are raised. And as liberal as your thoughts can be, as you grow into an adult, what you're taught and what your culture imbibes into you remains with you, no matter how hard you try to rationalize it and get it out of you. So anyway, so come a long story short, things got really bad when I got pregnant with my daughter, the second one, to the extent that it included pushing and shoving and throwing me down when I'm full-time pregnant. So my parents, and he had an affair at that time too, and my parents were visiting me during that time, and my dad had literally begged me to get out of the relationship. He's like, you're changing, you're not the same person. Now think about it. I'm a girl that grew up in India and came here by myself for a further education. Back in the day, as much as it wasn't abnormal or unusual, but definitely not a very normal thing for someone that comes from a middle class family to do this. So my dad was like, this is not you, you're changing, you need to get out. So I was
But
really,
that's common too, right? In Indian culture to get a
it is
divorce.
uncommon. It is definitely, I have to admit, it's not common at all. As a matter of fact, I can tell you most people that watch my video, a big part of my family and friends would probably go. A big part are very supportive. I do have very, very supportive network. But the part that is not very supportive is probably going to judge me as, oh, she's telling her story, she's airing her dirty laundry. That is so unlike our culture. I'm not saying everybody is like that. Like I said, my dad is not, my parents are not, my family is not. And they have been extremely supportive and very, very liberal in the context of, um, I guess, female rights, I suppose.
And protecting your safety and protecting the safety of their grandchildren as well.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was more important. And so in the end, we did decide at that point, right after my second child was born, within 2 weeks, I had agreed for a divorce. I said, all right, I'm ready. Um, but whatever happened, he turned back and apologized. The typical cycle of DV, he comes back and I'm so sorry, I want to make up. This was all my fault, blah, 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 the same story. And I was listening to Patrice's interview, and she said it takes 7 times for a woman to try to get out. And I would say I am also one of the statistics. It took me just as many times actually even worse is it took me as many times of trying to get out plus an illegitimate child to be born. So, and so I did go back. And on hindsight, when I went to rehash of why did I go back at that time, he wanted to come back because it was within the 2 or 3 years of time limits that UCIS requires for you to be married, because I had sponsored his green card. So you need to be married for a certain time for that green card to pass through.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you don't realize it when you're in that. So in all this, what makes my story slightly different is add that cultural aspect and make it as I'm not fighting just my abuser. I'm not just fighting my ex-husband. They're not one person. I'm fighting his family. He has
Right.
3
That's
sisters and his parents. Everybody works as one entity.
So that's what you meant with when you placed your marriage in your Indian culture context to explain that you don't just marry a man, you marry his entire family, correct?
Right. So, but what's interesting is this entire family is in United States, and they still have the same issues. It's what it boggles my mind that they don't just separate it out. It's funny, I went to India just a few weeks ago, and some of my friends came to me and told me that they got phone calls from his sisters telling them not to socialize with me because I am this criminal that the family court has found me in contempt. I'm a criminal, and why would they be socializing with me? And the only thing I can think about is, oh my God, we've been in this 9 years. I haven't known or seen them in 9 years. And they still don't give up. And right now, their brother has these children. If anything at all, they should be happy and just move on in their life. So that's what I mean when I talk about how cultural, again, I don't want to make it as every Indian family is like that, but there is a small component of culture associated with personalities as well. Of course, there's that personality, which is the primal example and also primal reason for this particular attitude. And then you add culture to it, it makes it a little bit more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the story. 2 3 years after my daughter is born, I got served with his paternity suit. I received it. And at that time, he was finished. He was 6 months away from completing our fellowship. So he was doing his cardiology fellowship, and he was a little over 6 months, 6 to 7 months away from completing it. And Obviously, I was at this dilemma, the cross section, as this marriage was over a long time ago. But now there's also this additional financial burdens. I was already a faculty at university at that time, and he was a fellow. So you can imagine there was a financial imbalance, uh, and I was I was making more. So up until then, I was the primary breadwinner. Actually, until our divorce, I was the primary breadwinner. Um, at which point we I had to rationalize with him and say, listen, I can't see us continuing this anymore. We need to get out. So he had offered that he did not want to get divorced. He said, I will work with you. Let's move back to India after I finish my fellowship and we'll try to regroup. Now, as much as, of course, when I think about it now, it was a trap for me. But at that point, I said, okay, getting divorced, knowing his vindictive and vengeful personality, getting divorced was also not an option. You leave aside the cultural aspects of it. Just knowing him, which came out exactly right, is knowing him, getting divorced was not a good option either. So I had agreed to move back to India. In that context, his parents were with us at that time. And of course, the mom wasn't happy that the son agreed to move back to India. And that led one thing to another and a very bad domestic violence incidents where the police were called and police separated us. And at which point the eternal optimist or the uh, mental state I was in, I said, okay, let me go back to India. When things calm down, he will come to me. And while I was in India, one thing led to another. Soon I find out that my citizenship papers were tampered and he got citizenship and I didn't get my citizenship papers were tampered. And then I find out that he had contacted FBI. And then I found out that the local consulate was contacted. And soon everything fell in one place to me. That was a trap. So his plan was to send me to India. And because I was still on green card at that time, is he would get citizenship and put that parental kidnapping case on me.
Okay.
But thank God, I can tell you in all this, I had many, many good um, sources, support system, and good powers that helped me. And I'm thankful for that. Before his story could completely evolve, I found out that this is what he's doing, and I came back to the country, brought my children back. He and filed for divorce based on adultery. And in Louisiana, you get a divorce within 1 week if you file a divorce based on adultery.
So he claimed that you were being the adulterer here?
No, I filed for that.
Okay, you filed. Okay.
Yeah. So he did came. Of course, the story he told in the 6 months I was away, close to 6 months I was away in India, the stories he had told here, everybody, is that he found me red-handed with somebody and I was the adulterer. To the people that did not know me, that was the story. And to the people that knew me but not very closely, the story was she is extremely career-oriented. She does not care about the family. I don't want her to work now that I'm going to become a full-fledged cardiologist. She wouldn't agree to it, so she went back to India. So those were the stories here. Anyhow, so when I came back, meanwhile, when I was in India, I discovered so many things about him that were suppressed. Of course, a part of it could be the same situation of we don't want to tell them lies, or we don't want her to know the negative side of him if she's continuing to live with it, which is what happens with anybody that you care about. So I've discovered so many financial exchanges. I've discovered so many extortions and misrepresentations, even to the fact that I found out that he got his medical college admission pretending to be somebody that he's not. So
Wow.
a whole lot of other things that I did not know before, which also one of it included dowry-related extortion. So uh, long story short, I came back and filed for divorce, and we got divorced in 1 week. This is against my lawyer's advice. He had advised me to take a separation-based divorce, which would will allow me, give me better financial support than adultery-based, which is basically you're divorced in 1 week and everything is done. So my thought process then, again, being this eternal optimist, is listen, he does not like me. If he wants to be happy elsewhere, go ahead, be happy. I don't want to separate the children from him. I never want to keep him away from the children. And so I hope he'll just focus on kids. So at that point, while he was controlling, I had not seen much of abuse towards children. So that made me feel that he loves his children and it shouldn't matter. Of course, what I did not consider at that point is he was never home.
Right.
And he was always training. He was never home. And the times he was home, and he's done if he's being nasty to me, and that's the end of it. I was a protective barrier between the children and him. So I never get an opportunity. That said, we got divorced in 2008 officially. And there started my life in the family court.
I can
I went
predict
to
it.
the family court thinking I can
Yeah.
expect for anything from my ex because he is vindictive, he is vengeful, and he is abusive. But I'm going to go into a family court with the hope that they can see it through. Here I am thinking, listen, there's a police report, a police case of domestic violence. He has a child outside the marriage. There's no contradiction on that. And there is this history of how he's abused and everything. But all this, what are the chances that anybody will ever not believe me? Boy, was I wrong. So the first time when I went in to get a permanent restraining order against him, I had a temporary restraining order, and when I went for a permanent restraining order, he was just about ready to finish his fellowship. It's like 3 weeks away from finishing his fellowship and starting life as cardiologist. So his lawyer came to us and said, hey, this is going to affect his license. She's getting divorced anyway, so please don't pursue it. And for me, I'm like, okay, divorce automatically provides some level of protection to me, which is true. And children, I don't have any worries about. Why do I bother about his license? Okay. I dismissed that motion. Typical, right? And then we went in since 2008 to 9 now. I had at least four real custody trials, which involved more than 5 days of trial. At least on an average of 10 court appearances per year for one thing or the other.
So he was vexatiously litigating.
Yes, it's every single thing is an issue. And my favorite response from him, which is actually only one response, you ask him, hey, Um, our son has this soccer game on this weekend. Happens to be your weekend. Can we exchange the weekend? Or if you don't, and I think he will like it if you participate. How about I pay for your hotel so you can come and participate. Response, follow the judgment. 2 weeks down the road, there's a contempt filed against me because I didn't bring the kids. And 2 weeks down the road, I'm found in contempt. Okay, of course, I'm exaggerating when I say 2 weeks, but that's just an example as how
So
things evolved.
did you have these were these like verbal conversations that you had with him, or were
No,
they?
these are all emails. We use our
Okay.
family wizard. There were verbal conversations stopped within 1.5 years of getting divorced. I had to stop it. There was no way because his favorite way and word to use to refer to me is in Telugu. It's basically a translation of a prostitute. That's how he would refer to me. That's how he would talk to the kids too. It's is that Lanjamunda listening? What that means is that prostitute listening to our conversation.
Yeah, my ex does the same thing.
Right, right. So I had to completely cut off phone conversations, and even text messages were fewer. We had to get orders for everything. The judgments, you won't believe it. If you go to New Orleans Civil Court record for my case, there's 12 volumes, and the index page on its own is, I was told, is 76 pages.
But were you able to use the emails to show in these contempt hearings that you had made every effort to follow the
Yes,
orders?
I was. Actually, I was found in contempt, believe it or not. At least in that case, the kids really didn't go, okay? It's irrelevant if I tried to exchange it or he didn't work, but kids didn't really go. There were times when the kids were with him and he was not there because he was working. Well, let me rephrase that. Their kids were at his house.
Right.
So he would work outside of the city. He leaves on Friday early. By the time I bring them, it's late Friday. So he's not home when kids come to his house. And I picked them up middle of Sunday. So he is not back yet. So to cover that up, he would say she didn't bring them.
Oh my God.
And the judge said, okay, she's in contempt. And how would you demonstrate or show that you've dropped the kids is by using video and audio recordings. I had them. But a few years before this, there was a situation where my ex was being verbally abusive to me, and I had it all recorded, and I had used it to file for contempt against him. And his lawyer worked it into it and got us to agree to consent to not video record during the exchanges. And the only reason I agreed for that at that time, because he was making his stepchildren video record. I was like, I can't put those children into this. So if that's going to stop those children from the trauma of video recording our exchanges, I will agree to it. So they've used it as a way to block me from putting evidence of how I've dropped the kids. So that it then became he said, she said.
Yeah.
And the judge said, okay, she's in contempt. Okay. And then I was found in contempt when there was an active restraining order against him, which he had extended. Yes. Go figure. Go figure. If you tell this to people, they won't believe you. And I can, if anyone's, like I said, if anyone wants to investigate, I have all the evidence. I can show it to you. How his lawyer played it into the court where I could not put in all the evidence. And she keeps claiming, this woman did not allow this man to see his children for 300 days. So in the story of my custody, in 2012, I relocated to Jackson, Mississippi, because the abuse was getting really bad and he was going around defaming me. And what that had caused is for me to lose a job. I lost my job, actually. The only other place, because of the nature of my work, it's not one of those you pick up and go work in another place. You need a medical school, you need a lab, you need a research lab. The closest place I could go to was Jackson, while I had offers from two other universities that were further away. I chose Jackson just for the only reason that it's close and it will still continue to offer me the flexibility to keep the children in his life. Now think, this is my thought process. This man's not going to make any effort to be in their life. So I took upon myself to make sure they are in his life. Mm-hmm. Which is, of course, now that in hindsight, where I am right now, I think about it and say I was shooting myself in my feet. Because I'm thinking at a I'm going to be on the high road. I'm going to take the high road all the time. Let the children decide what relationship they want with their father, and they will not decide it if they don't get opportunity to interact with them. And as a parent, it's my responsibility to teach them how to cope with his personality, not to completely keep them away from it.
Well, you want to facilitate the father-child relationship too.
Absolutely.
What
Absolutely.
I did too.
More than that, also allow the children to develop a relationship that they can sustain as adults.
Right.
Learn how to cope with it and how to cope with his temper tantrums, how to cope with his personality or what have you, right? So while I was busy working with children to survive this nonsense and also survive 100% life, live 100% life in the 60 to 70% of the time I had them with me. And allowing them to learn and thrive and achieve their goals, my ex and his lawyer were busy scheming against me. So here's an example of how family court can continue to enable an abuser. Specific example. So when I moved in 2012, I moved based on a relocation judgment. What that is we had a 6-day long trial to determine if it's in the best interest of the children to move. So in the Louisiana factors for best interest, one of those is domestic violence. So in the domestic violence situation, I will quote one of the points that the judge made. I'm quoting here. It says, although Dr. My ex denies any allegations of abuse, there has been substantial evidence to suggest abuse perpetrated by Dr. My ex against Dr. Pochampally. The nature of their relationship evidences that Dr. My ex is very controlling, which has escalated into several instances of domestic abuse that included harm to his children. It would be best for Dr. Pochampally to be removed from an environment where that negative and violent behavior could be further perpetrated. Okay? And this was the judgment I had. I moved to Jackson. 2 days later, literally 2 days later, my ex sends me a text saying, I'm here, can I see the children? And the kids had spoken to him just 10 minutes before that. It was like late in the evening, around 8:30 in the evening. And that was their first day of school. That day was their first day of school in new school, and the next day. So I'm like, what do you mean? Do you want to watch them on Skype? See them on Skype? And he goes, no, I'm in your neighborhood. I want to see them. I'm like, what? You just got off the phone with children. You didn't tell me that you were here. And one thing led to another. He sent threatening messages. He showed up, and I had to call the police um, and get a restraining order against him because he went off on a rant. And his excuse was, here's the funniest excuse. I have to say, I find it funny now, but it is very real for people like me, domestic violence victims that are in family court, how things can be manipulated to show you as the perpetrator or as the person that is causing trouble. So his excuse was, the following weekend, he wants kids to go see his niece's dance recital. And he wanted an extra day off from the school. So it was, I said, it was his weekend. So it's your weekend. You can take the children. I have no problems with that. But I don't agree that they should miss this day of school.
Right.
If you want, you can, I can help you with putting them on flight to go to Washington, D.C., or I can bring them to Washington, D.C., or what have you. These discussions that were going on, never in that entire conversation did I say, I will not let them go. I don't give permission to go, which is, I didn't have a right to do it in the first place because it was his weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, I would never do anything like that. Even if it was my weekend, I would say, okay, take them, which is more important. They should be involved with the family activities too. So what he did is he used that as an excuse to get an ex parte order from the judge, which we never knew. Me or my lawyer did not know until after the fact. Ex parte order from the judge to go to the principal of this new school to ask for 1 day's permission to get out of school. Now, any parent will know that if you decide to take your child out of school 1 day, nobody will stop you.
Mm-hmm.
They may ask you for makeup. That's about it. Right? And this is at the beginning of the school year. So I did not know all that. And here he came and threatened me, so I got a restraining order. In that restraining order, it was only against me. I still did not stop him from visitation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I said the court order clearly said that its visitations are not covered in this. So he decided not to take them because it was too much trouble for him to come pick up the kids and take them to New Orleans and fly from them. That was his biggest trouble. To cover that up, what happens? He won't take them. And that became a big deal. And now in my court records, what was a dance recital has now become a wedding.
Yeah, it's blown it up into almost child abduction.
Almost child abduction. It's like,
Yeah.
how did this happen?
Mm-hmm.
What would have been a simple, okay, I'm going to take them this day, or I decided I'm going to put my foot down and I'm taking them out of school for 1 day. I'm going to come there and drive them and go. And he was in Jackson on Thursday and he wouldn't take them. That's how he planned that. And that's an example of how things can get so misrepresented and manipulated to plan things against you.
Yeah, and once it's in your records and in your file and it starts stacking up against you and a judge looks at that, because they can't keep track of all these cases, and they look at it and they think, oh, this mother's trying to sabotage the contact between the father and the children while you have gone out of your way to facilitate it, and that's the reality.
Right. And so here's the judge that allowed me to relocate based on whatever. And now, within 2 years, she's finding me the person that's causing trouble. And I'm also, in my lifetime of so many years in for a family court, and when I look at these textbook cases of how family court can hurt victims, I have seen cases where the judges that were pro-DV victims have got systemized, is the word people told me to use, systemized, and now they are not. They are PAS supporters, parental alienation supporters. Same judges that have been looked at as, oh my God, they've been trained in DV, they've been trained to understand DV victims, they've represented DV victims before, they've been super successful as lawyers representing DV victims, and now all of a sudden they're not. Now they are father's rights group lawyers,
It's
judges.
because they get the funding. They get the funding for domestic violence, the federal funding for that. And then they get the federal funding for the father's rights. So they're banking on your case.
Exactly. I used to think that was conspiracy theory, believe it or not. I heard that as you can see me, I'm a researcher, and I will not let anything go without researching from end to end. I really need to know inside out of everything. And every time I heard these theories of how fathers' rights funding helps judges and whoever, I would take them as conspiratory theories, and I would not support them. But in reality, my life is a living example of those theories, and I can't really brush them off because this one particular judge has been the greatest disappointment in my life, because I knew her as a lawyer. I knew her. She's also from the same background, racial background as me, and just the greatest disappointment. And then there was a custody evaluator who evaluated me as the best mother. She's like, I find Radhika to be the most adept parent. She is in tune with her children, both of them. She knew exactly how each of them worked. And this lady, 2 years down the road, when she had to update the evaluation, she says she recommends 50-50. Before that, it was primary me and visitation for him. And when I asked her why she would do that, I mean, she's a very well-respected psychologist with a PhD and everything good, right? She said, I know your ex is a narcissist. If you don't please him for a little bit, he's going to make your life miserable. And you're here, and you will be in his life. You will be the primary nurturing parent for your children anyway. You're just giving this 50-50, he feels in power, and he won't bother you.
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. That is right. It doesn't, and it may would have. I don't know. It doesn't work that way. It's definitely there. And then she has offered herself to be our parental coordinator moving forward after that judgment had.
Right, because that would be a wonderful source of funding for her,
right.
advising
Yeah. So if
she know it won't work, so she's now involved in making money of the constant conflict. So let me share my story here, because you mentioned the research, and like you, I'm in the academic field, and I did the same thing as you did and started researching, like, hey, why does this happen to me? Why does it happen to you? Why does this happen to millions of mothers around the world? And, there's this constant debate going on with these fathers' rights proponents that say, oh, there's no gender bias in the family court. Well, they can research that over here. There are an incredible amount of articles on this page of the Leadership Council that evidence, this is all academic research, that evidence that 82% of violent fathers who pursue full custody get granted full custody. So really these are article after article after article. It's a long scroll-a-thon. For anyone who wants to see the research, who approaches me on Facebook and says, this is not true, well, go read all these articles then. You'll be reading for the next 2 years to come, because this is an endless scroll-a-thon. It goes on, and all these researchers have come to the same conclusions that you and I have come to. You can, if you're not into research, You can also read some more lighter material, some more easily absorbable material, so to speak. There's definitely a gender bias in the courtroom, and the parental alienation syndrome that's used against you and also used against me is what's used most often. And for those folks who are not familiar with that term or that concept, they can also go here to the Leadership Council and read about it. And you can tell us how it played out in your case. I just want to point people to these sources in case they were doubting what you said, because what you are saying is absolutely correct. And this is unfortunately, like I said in the beginning when we started our interview, almost a script that's applied in our cases. Even when you can evidence that you have been facilitating this father-child relationship, you're still accused of it. And it's usually these really evil attorneys that the fathers
Right. So this is a good point to talk about his attorney. His attorney, I had interviewed her. I had handwritten notes from her. I have emails to show that I had interviewed her. And the only reason I did not hire her is because she said there's not a single judge in New Orleans that cannot be bought. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's not. And I walked out of that meeting basically telling her, hey, listen, this is my children's father, and I respect him for that. I do not like his actions. I disrespect his actions, but I do respect him for the fact that he's given me two beautiful children. And I did love him, and I want him to live his life on his own. I have no intention to crush that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to hire you. A few months later, my ex hired her. And when I filed for disqualification, I did file for disqualification. And my attorney then came to me and said, oh, she's my good friend. We can work together. You're not contesting anything. It's only going to be Judy. You are okay with joint custody. So let's just mediate this and get out of this. That's the same attorney that will not allow me to file for custody based on domestic violence. So Louisiana is one of those states that has very recently good custody laws. And one of those is the domestic violence custody law, which once you incorporate in your initial custody arrangement, the perpetrator will never get custody. So this attorney, who is a very well-known family law attorney locally, convinced me not to include that. That it's wrong. If you do that, you will lose your children, blah, 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 all that stuff, which is very typical of how attorneys bully their clients. And you trust your attorney, right? That's what's supposed to be. The attorney is watching out for your back, and you're paying hundreds and thousands of dollars to them. Anyhow, within a very short time, and one custody trial later, I found out that those two were working in concert. Those two attorneys were working in concert to making money because it's amazing. Again, another conspiratory theory that came true in my life is we had two cases in parallel of, at this point, I was the lower income person, my ex is a higher income person. And there was this other case where the lower income person was with my ex's lawyer and higher income person was in my lawyer. So we both of us got swapped. So this other case where there was no DV allegation or anything, all of a sudden got sole custody, which is from my lawyer, and another case. So it's an exchange. That's how these lawyers work. Anyhow, so this attorney, my ex's attorney, will make up documents. She used one such made-up document to support her parental alienation syndrome claim. I'm not saying that she made up documents, but she's aware that it was not an original document because her client in the testimony in court admitted that he doesn't know where those documents came from.
Wow.
So here's the story for PAS, how PAS evolved in my life. Of course, these guys went and got contempts against me, a couple of contempts against me. And the most recent contempt is, I'm just in contempt. That's it. The judge didn't even expand on it. It's like, what I'm in contempt for? I'm just in contempt.
All right, we're going to call you, you're going to give you a middle, your middle name is going to be Contempt.
That's
Radhika
right.
Contempt.
He is in contempt. I'm like, what am I in contempt for? So, of course, on the record, I have 3 contempts against me. What do you do?
It's such a circus.
It
It's a
is a
circus.
circus. So
And
those are 2 times I was in contempt. I was held in contempt when there was a restraining order in place. I was held in contempt when kids were visiting him. I was held in contempt when I would drive 4 hours from Jackson to New Orleans and he's not home. So what do? I bring my children back, right? I don't leave them on the streets. I just bring my children back. So I was held in contempt. So this lawyer says, this father did not see these kids for 300 days. And guess what? Since I moved to Jackson, he had only 212 visitation days, total days. And in that, he would not have seen the children on the days he was visiting, must visit them, maybe about 4 or 5. I offered exchanges. Sometimes I took them for exchanges and those exchanges didn't count. So I was held in contempt where if he was supposed to see them on November 14th weekend, I brought them on November 7th because they had something going on November 14th. I was held in contempt there. So here's another beautiful part of that story of PAS. So in December 4th, we had a contempt trial. That's the 3rd contempt trial. I had contempts against him for not, there was a previous judgment for him to be taking reunification therapy with my son. He did not go for it. There was a previous contempt judgment that said he should be actively involved in their summers. They should be doing something, not just sit at home locked up. He didn't do all that. And he shouldn't threaten me anymore because there were so many audio and video recordings of him threatening to kill me. So he shouldn't do all that. Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, that's not where the response I got is, oh, everybody will die one day.
I mean, is that right there should be enough grounds to, have only supervised visitation for the father.
Right. So he would send me texts that you will die very soon.
Oh my God.
So you know what? You know what his other attorney came around and said? His attorney said, oh, everybody will die one day. And these are text messages, Geerte. I'm not joking. I presented them, text messages, voice messages. Voice messages he's leaving to my son saying, oh, son, I want you to become like a lion and kick your mother's butt. Some of those are in our language. Of course, he's extremely intelligent. He'll use them in my language. And I provided translations for it. And of course, in some of those, in the translations, you lose the impact. But I want you dead is not, you can't lose the impact. It's the same. Right. No matter what language you say it, it's the same, even you get translated. So the judge said, you can't do this. So when I filed for all those, he had admitted to not going for rehab therapy with my son. He has admitted to not taking them for any summer, admitted in writing in the response. He was not found in contempt. And that's here, the only contempt they had against me was visitation violation.
Yeah.
And I'm providing all these documents. So she didn't know how to find me in contempt. So she didn't put any specific. She just said, you're in contempt. So, then she changed custody at a contempt hearing. She said, coming
Wow.
next year. Yes, there was no pleading. Neither of us made pleading for change in custody. There was no discussion on custody, and it wasn't a trial. It was a contempt hearing. So on the contempt hearing, at the end of it, she changed the custody to reversing what it was. What I had was I had the primary custody in Jackson, and they would visit him. She said, come next school year, we'll reverse it. Okay. And then, of course, when I couldn't tell my kids that, and I told them just before they went to their father for Christmas break, in the presence of a neutral, brand new psychologist. You know how they'll tell you, if you do it, you can never be right. You're darned if you do, if you're darned if you don't. So I had decided that I will inform this to them in front of a neutral person. So whatever reactions they had, she can record and give it to the judge, because we had just put in a new trial request. So I dropped them off for Christmas, and the tradition is every time I drop them off, I can just forget that they are here. They're my kids, because he rarely ever gets them to let them talk to me. So they don't generally talk to me much. So one day we got an email into a G-Talk message that my son said, I need help, mommy. He's harassing us like there's no tomorrow. So I conversed with him on G-Talk for a little bit, asking what was going on. He said he hit him, and they called the police, and police didn't help. And the Child Protective Services is involved. And soon after, I got a call from Child Protective Services. So all this is, as a mother, I'm sitting here wondering what's going on. You know, this is my 14, 15-year-old son begging me to help him. And I can't. So while I'm reeling with all this, my lawyer and I are contemplating what we should do. I get slapped with sole custody, no contact, pleading, ex parte pleading, based on parental alienation syndrome. Because they found these two documents on my son's email. One looked like a journal that he was writing on how he would protect himself if the father would attack him. Because that was not the first time. It's happened before, right? And for within the last few months, he's been telling my son that my kids that he has the judge in his pockets, and he's going to make sure that the mother goes to jail and the kids come back. So the children are petrified. So they are making plans of what if. These are not little kids anymore, 14.
And they were 14 and 15 at this point?
No, the older one was 14, almost 15. The younger one's 12. So they're not little kids anymore.
Right.
So they're seeing the abuse, and they're starting to voice it. And what I found was all the other cases of PAS are also real when the children are old enough to voice the abuse. Until then, they somehow don't surface so much, at least the cases I have seen. And then that's the first time I've heard PAS. So his attorney filed a pleading based on these two documents. One is what looked like a journal where my son wrote, how am I going to get out of it? And two is this couple of email exchanges, IM exchanges between my son and I, where I'm trying to figure out what's going on. At the end of it, I even said, I don't even know if that's Pranav, because I don't have that confidence. He confiscates everything, so I don't even know if it's my son. So those two documents, believe it or not, Geerte, those two documents are the only ones attached to the pleading claiming PAS. There was no expert. There was no psychological evaluation. There was no testimony for witnesses. There was no talking to children. We had pled that you should talk to children.
Yeah, I think that's the most important point here. I mean, at this point, the children are 12, 13, 14 years old. They should be heard in court, and not just in court. They should be, your situation should have been handled by a multidisciplinary team of people, of experts who could have interviewed the children over an extended period of time to evaluate what's really going on.
Right. And the issue here is this psychologist that I had used as a witness, and she was my witness on my case on retrial for the December 4th hearing. She had clearly testified that these kids are petrified, they are deeply disturbed by the thought of moving back to New Orleans, and whatever it might be, these kids should be evaluated before any, and then their opinions, because of their age, their opinion should be considered. And she testified. And on the other side, they didn't have any testimony. They didn't have any experts. It was almost like it's a story that his lawyer and the judge, if anybody reviews my transcripts, you will see they were tag teaming to target me.
Yeah, they went out to the golf course together over the weekend and decided that they would take your kids away from you, and they would do it together by concocting some nonsense.
It's exactly that. Almost it feels like it is definitely a concocted nonsense. So what makes it worse is, kids were in Mississippi at that time, and then I filed for an emergency jurisdiction for Mississippi to hold on to the children. And that's a very weak claim. Usually most lawyer judges don't take it. And when my ex came to pick them up, the children would not go. So you know what they did? They got the judge to bring them to the court, and my children were forced into the car to go with them. It was just such a sneaky plot. I just cannot believe, because here's my son screaming at the top of his voice, I'll go to juvenile detention. Please don't send me there.
And you have witnesses that were present that
I
heard
have witnesses. Yes, I have witnesses, and I have the transcript, which is now sealed. But definitely witnesses that heard both children say, we'll go to detention center. And what's interesting is his attorney made a judgment for the judge to sign, in which judge had crossed out that if children refuse to go with the father, they should be put in juvenile detention center. And the father's attorney asked for the children to be put in juvenile detention center if they refuse to go.
Yeah, these father's attorneys, they are demons themselves. I mean, they're really demonic entities. That is what I'm arriving at too. It is not about children. It is not about human rights. It's all about winning. It's all about making money. These people have no conscience. They have no heart. I don't know what planet they came from, but we need to go after them.
That's the interesting part. So to me, as a judge, you go to the judge to help you. As a judge, I would think that the minute the judge saw that, oh, this is a father that's asking his children to be put in detention center if they didn't go to him. Wait a minute. There's something wrong with it. Right?
That and the death threats, right? That should have been like major red flags.
Right. And so the children went there. It's been since April 19th. I haven't seen them, talked to them, know anything about them. Now in all this, I did not lose my parental rights, and the judgment on January was only temporary. So by the way the judgments read, it was temporary, and beginning August of this year, school year, I should have joint custody, which was the reverse of that school year. They would be there, and I have visitation. Okay? But during the time, because of what the judge did, she's in the recusal stage, and we don't have a judge in the trial court.
Okay.
And the lawyers playing every single game defined by the lawyers' games. One example. I sent an email to my ex. Where are the kids going to school? What are they doing in summer? No response. My lawyer sends a letter to his lawyer. She responds saying, your client has no rights to knowing where the children are. So I went from school to school to find out where my children are.
Yeah, I have had done the same thing. I've called all the schools in Marin County, California, and say, I'm looking for my daughter, and these school directors would be like, what? We've never heard of something like this. It's like,
You know,
yeah,
I went
people,
physically, I went school to school, right?
yeah,
So in one
outrageous,
school, where my sons, they were shocked. They see my name as the mother.
right?
They
Yep,
don't, my information is not mine. Everything else is his wife. So as they see it, that is one entity. This child is not from a divorced family. So they were shocked to see me. They didn't even have a judgment on file.
yep.
So then I had to bring my birth certificate, bring my children's birth certificate and show them. And they were like, oh my God, why would a father do that?
That's a good question.
Right? And then, uh, and this is a very interesting part on another conspiratory theory becoming real in my life. You know how they say judges are all one clan, one clan, and they all protect each other. And I would never believe that. I would have said no because they are in this honorable profession. I'm thinking from my perspective. You know, the way I look at it is I will never do anything to protect anyone to jeopardize my career. I've worked very hard all my life to get to where I am. And why would I do personal favors to jeopardize that? That's how I'm thinking, right? I will help, but I will not go to any extent to jeopardize my career. Now, when I'm thinking of the judges, I'm thinking the same way. These judges are mostly elected. Why would they go beyond and above to help one of their own? Because they have to get reelected, and it's also their own record that reflects their thing. So they wouldn't try to hurt it, right? That's the impression I had, which was shattered into little pieces when I went for my appeals oral argument. So my judgments, obviously, I appealed, and it took almost a year now, and we just had an oral argument, and we don't have a judgment out yet. In the oral argument were three judges on the bench, and I felt it was very hostile. But what was interesting is the judges had information that was not part of the record. And it was obviously ex parte communication, either with the trial court judge or someone else, because they had information that even the even the court watchers found were shocking. And actually, one of the court watchers came around and said it was bizarre how one of the judges was trying to rephrase his attorney's sentences. So his attorney represented to the court that right now we have joint custody with visitation, and this woman is continuing to disobey. That's exactly how she refers me, by the way. This woman is continuously disobeying the judge's orders. She has not she has not done psychological therapy, which would have enabled to establish the recontact, right? Which was a lie. We had done it long time ago, months ago. That's what my lawyer said. It's like, oh my God, this is such a made-up lie, which is continuing her behavior of making up stuff. Is we had done this and it's been sitting in the court, and she set it up for trial. So and one of the judges on the bench, she rephrases that and says, oh, but you had asked for ex parte. Why would I give you an ex parte? And my lawyer goes, no, I didn't say that I had asked for ex parte. It's like, how do you know this information? It's not part of the record, or I didn't tell you. And then she goes, but then I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about the fact that she's represented to you that we didn't do that, something that we have done. And he says, no, that's not what she said. She said blah, 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 something that's just trying to rephrase it. So it was amazing. It was a spectacle, very depressing, very demoralizing. Is
They
that
all had drinks they all had drinks together a few days prior to the hearing and decided how they were going to railroad you at the
right?
appeals hearing.
So yeah, here's the sunny part where this the judge says, "Oh, this girl has so many contempts. What are we going to do about it?" So my attorney says, "Punish her. Why are you punishing the children?"
Yeah, this is not about the children.
Right. So anyway, so that's another conspiratory theory which I didn't believe in before, and now I'm like, oh, maybe it's possible, which is sad and extremely difficult for anybody to accept, you know.
If you're an ethical person, you cannot even imagine how unethical the people are within the family court business. It truly is a mafia, unfortunately. It's been called like that by many of my guests, and I do agree with them. I barely ever see an ethical judgment. It's not about the best interest of the child. I mean, I'm studying all the family codes and I'm seeing what should be happening.
Well, it is actually. I'm not going to. I don't think I will subscribe to it as a 100% theory. I feel that a family court becomes the enabling agent when there's abuse. Up until then, uh, there's hope for best interest of children being put as a forefront. Because I have seen in my case, in 9 years of being in Louisiana, New Orleans court, there have been fair judgments. There have been good judgments too. And most of the cases, there was no allegation of, I mean, almost all the cases, there was no allegation of abuse.
It's as soon as the abuse comes in that the family codes are twisted and turned to
As soon
be
as the abuse comes
beneficial.
in and one of the parties has money to pay.
Right.
So I'll give you an example of how lawyers abuse this. Very recent example. So his lawyer represented to the court that Fourth Circuit that we have joint custody. So immediately my lawyer said, hey, you represented this to the appeals court. We should start this right now. And my daughter had her 13th birthday recently. So he said she should have a visitation on that day. Guess what she says? She turns right around and says, nope, it's not going to happen. I have recommended or whatever. I told my client to not reinstate contact at his own volition. Because at another status conference with the judge, she had represented to the judge that I was in contact with children and her client is okay. Her intention to do that was to, again, set up for another contempt against me. And when my lawyer came back and put his foot down and said, no, she's not in touch, but if you're interested, since you said your client's okay with it, let's have a consent judgment. She then backed off and said, no, I'm not going to do it. Even though my client is okay with it, I'm not going to let him do that because, of course, I'm going to lose the money. If she starts talking and if they become good to each other, my income stream is cut off.
Right.
Right? So
now let's talk about your son, Pranav, because he isn't taking this situation laying down. He is actually going on YouTube and talking about what's going on with him and reaching out for help. Is that correct?
That was when he was still with me, actually. So from the point of when I picked them up after Christmas break, both of them told me that their father had told them that they are coming right back to New Orleans and I'm going to jail, which is me. They will never see me again. This is before our January 8th trial. I picked them up on Jan 4th. So they knew what was happening. So when I told them that we have to go back to New Orleans and this is what happened, I didn't tell them that I had an order that I should not tell the kids that they are going to be moving away from Jackson forever, and I should just pick them and put them in the car and drop them at New Orleans police station without telling them where they are going. That's the order. That's in the judgment. Anyway, so they had figured it out and they refused to go. They were fighting it. I tried all means. It didn't work out. And I said, the only way we can deal with this is you tell your father. You talk to your father and figure it out. I cannot do anything about it. And they tried calling him, emailing him, doing everything. So one day he came to me and said, Mom, I'm going to put YouTube videos so that maybe he will see them. So he started what he said is a Dear Daddy channel where he is talking to his father.
Let's take a look at that video. Sometimes my mom has a few issues. Let's take a look at that video. Let's share that video with the viewers so they have an idea of what your son put out on YouTube in order to try and change his father's mind. That's the short one, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, okay, because he's done two. So we're going to take a look at the short one, and we'll leave it to Biggie to let us know when that one's playing.
Daddy, since you don't seem to want to talk to me over the phone or through email, I'm just gonna have to resort to this. I'm just gonna read you what I sent you because you don't seem to respond over email. I guess this is the only way. Dear Daddy, we just found out my Umma's been trying to make us go to New Orleans. I'm just telling you that there's no way that anyone or anything can make me go to New Orleans. I've been in this war for 8 years and I'm sick and tired of being caught in the middle without a voice. If you want to fight with our mom so badly, then do it. Just leave us out of it. I'm done with this and there's nothing you can do about it. If you truly cared about me, you would talk to me instead of hitting me because I don't want to go to New Orleans.
Yeah, so this is the video, first video he put out in an attempt to talk to his father, convey his feelings to his father. And he then put in more videos. On March 18th, there was a enforcement judgment where the children were supposed to have gone to their father when he came to pick them up from Mississippi. At a police station, these children refused to go, and 6 sheriffs were not able to get these kids into the father's car. So after that, both my kids decided to actually come out and ask for help. So the older one, the boy, made that video and put out basically sending out a plea and explaining to people about his plight, which was our life. Our life was one court date to another. It was no life for us. Everything was one court date to another. We couldn't.
I want to see it. I want to share it with the audience because it's so rare that the children get to actually speak out about their case in public. Your son is so very brave for doing that. And I think the children really need to be heard in all of this, and they're not. So I really want to share what your son put out to the world in his video called Dear Everybody. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Biggie. Play it.
Dear everybody, I've been in a divorced family for about 8 years of my life. I thought what was happening to me was pretty normal, and I wasn't supposed to have a voice. I thought it was okay for the entire legal system to disregard me because I was a child. Then I started seeing how kids were treated in different situations. Like kids being treated as adults when they're being convicted for a crime, or kids being CEOs when they're only 12 years old. Then I started thinking, if kids are treated as adults, then why can't they be treated as adults when someone's making decisions that are going to change their entire lives? How can someone who's never lived with either parent decide that one's unfit to be a parent and the other's perfectly fit? Great. How can someone make that decision with only information from one side? At this point, you might be asking, why am I making this now? I wanted to make this about 2 years ago when my dad assaulted my mother in front of me. But my mother told me not to because she told me to try and have a relationship with him and not judge him by the actions I see him do to her. Recently, it's gotten really bad, so I'm left with no choice. When I learned about the legal system in school, I learned it was great, where bad guys are always caught and justice is always served. Usually that's true. But when an abuser with money wants something, he gets it. The justice system is always about justice. But how is it justice that I'm being ripped away from my normal life in the middle of the school year without any say? This is how it's been my whole life. Because of the legal system, I've never really had any stability. In New Orleans, I had two sets of friends because my dad never wanted to invite my mom's friends over. It was one of the, now that I look at it, it was one of the stupidest things I've ever heard of. I also had to have two sets of homework books because all my projects that I took to my dad's house disappeared. For a while, I really didn't know why my dad liked to scream, yell, and even hit me. Then I started reading about what abusers were like and narcissists. They all the definitions perfectly matched him. It was like fitting two puzzle pieces together. Another thing that I realized was most abusers have charming personalities. That's why most people don't believe me when I tell them he's yelling at me and he's hitting me. Once I moved to Mississippi, I got some stability because I was living primarily with my mother, but I had to still visit my dad. It was like torture. Most of the time he wasn't even there, and when he was, he would interrogate us, asking us on and on about our mom and her relatives and everything he could think of. He wouldn't even let us go to the bathroom. Once his interrogation stopped, he'd start telling us how bad a person my mom was, different ways she's gonna die, and one time he even told me to go kill her. After all this, we'd have to go to sleep. There'd be no time left. That's how long it was. We've had so many trials since I moved to Mississippi, and all of them have gone in his favor. Our life has always depended on one trial date or another. We've never been able to make plans for anything. Since the summer break, things have gotten really bad. I started speaking out against my dad's abuse. And most of the time he said, "You wait. I'm going to make sure your mom goes to jail. I have the judges in my pocket." Since then, I've gotten a ruling that I had to move to New Orleans after the school year. And then after that, only like a week later, he hit me because I tried to reason with him and try and stay in Mississippi. And then less than a week later, after he hit me, and the CPS started investigating him, and I called the police, he got sole custody of me and my sister. Really? How does that make sense? How is that justice? Throughout all of this, I was never even given a voice for myself. I had recordings of his abuse on my phone, but he took those away. So I was left to live in fear with less rights than a dog. I was hoping for me to finally get my voice on Tuesday. Instead, all I got was another ruling from another court. Got another decision about my life that was made without any consideration for my well-being. They consider me a child that cannot voice their opinion, but they did the help of my therapist, my teachers, my friends, someone that knows about me more than they do. I got a decision that put me right into the abuser's arms. I got a decision that gave my life to someone who was arrested for assaulting my mother in front of me. I got a decision that gave my life to someone who wouldn't take me to my concert. A concert that I was supposed to play at. I did give my life to someone who'd rather say that rather leave me alone if my mom dropped all the cases than leave us alone if we left him alone. I don't understand. And worst of all, they're taking me away from the person who cares about me the most. One of the only people who actually cares about me. How's that gonna make me bond with my dad? What has he even done to try and be my dad? My mom's the reason why don't hate my dad yet, but the legal system's kind of forced me to. Madison's given me a great life, and if I leave it now, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna be able to win another presidential scholarship while I'm being my dad's punching bag? No one seems to care. And for anybody who thinks a 15-year-old can be coached, I'd like to see you try it yourself.
So that was Pranav's video to everybody. Again, I think it's amazing how brave he is. He's got that from his mom. And I want to share with the audience the Facebook page that his friends have put out for him, and that's not this one, I believe. Hold on, let me pull this up. It's this one. All right. So this is a Facebook page that friends of your son and daughter put together to as a call for action, so to speak, for the kids to help them. And I think this is really wonderful how the friends are rallying around them, and I highly respect that. Is something that I've done last week is help the children understand what's going on by kind of putting what you shared and what we talked about in a language that hopefully connects to them in my message for the stolen kids. It's on my website, freejasmine.com, spelled with the Dutch version of her name. And you can find this post under the help section in the menu. And I also put it out here at the recent post. And this message basically explains to them how they ended up with their father and being put on supervised visitation with the protective mother, or, you know, maybe they're not allowed to have any contact with their mothers. And this is a message specifically for them, explaining how they got to end up in this situation, how the fathers do this and why. And it also shows them what they can do about it, which is obviously the most important. So it has a section about this is what's really actually going on. It explains exactly what you shared with us, Radhika, the parental alienation syndrome and how it's used against the mothers, how the court professionals make a lot of money from continuing the fight, from fueling the fight, from creating a fight that maybe it's not even actually happening. And how all these court professionals are making money of this, that the cottage industry, as you called it, and what this is all about, because it's a very confusing situation for them. Here they have been, raised mostly by the primary nurturer, the mom, and all of a sudden they're placed with their father and they're not allowed to have any contact with their mothers, or only with a supervisor who maybe only allows them to talk about the weather and school, so they can't really have a real conversation. It explains how the mothers are targeted, how the mothers are financially devastated, and it explains also why the fathers are doing this, which is important for them to understand, because it explains what brainwashing is. It explains what Stockholm Syndrome is in language that children can understand, I hope. So if you are watching and you're in a situation like this as a protective mother or as a child, then this would be a very helpful page, I hope, for you all to share on Facebook or on other social media outlets, so we can reach the children and explain to them what's happening, so they can become verbal about what's happening, and to seek professional help, to seek maybe adults that they can trust to confide in, and how to do that, because obviously the trust issue is huge in these situations. Many of these children do understand that they are in a very sensitive, difficult situation. So they must learn to distinguish between adults that they can and that they cannot trust, in order to share with them what's really going on at home. And then I've also included in this this post an interview I did with Byrne, who that was last week. He is an adult now, but he is a survivor of this hostage situation type deal with his father, who abused him. And he explains what that was like. So I'm hoping that when the children watch this, that they feel more understood, they know that they're not alone, and they get a grip on why and how it's happening and what they can do. It also includes a video that I made. It's a tutorial, and it's called the How to Contact Your Mom Guide, and I have it open here on YouTube. The Safe and Secure How to Contact Your Mom Guide that explains to the children how they can make a safe and secure email account that cannot be hacked or tracked, and that goes around the monitoring that a lot of these fathers do of their children's internet activities. And just to explain, make sure if you're a child and you're watching this right now and you're going to use this tutorial, do that on the computer of a friend, someone you trust, or on a mobile phone, on a cell phone from a friend, because your father might have very well put spyware on your computer to monitor what you're doing. So that's very important. This is a 12-minute video that the children can follow step by step and pause it when needed, and create this email account and get in touch with your mom in a way that your dad cannot find out, because you know what? You have the basic human rights to have contact with your mother, with your grandparents, with your uncles and aunts and cousins. There's no judge that can tell you that you're not allowed to do that. That is against all human rights that you have, that you were born with, and do not allow any judge or any court to tell you that you're not allowed to have contact with your mom and with your maternal family. You can take that from me. Just think for yourself. That's part of this message too. Really think about, when you were with your mom, was it ever scary? Did you ever feel unsafe? If not, then there's nothing wrong with having any contact with your mom, no matter what anyone says. So try and stay with your feelings. Try and stay with your own gut instinct about all of this, and try not to listen to the nonsense that you are being told about your mother. We need the children to become empowered and become empowered to the point that hopefully judges and policymakers are going to start listening. And on that topic, I have also added a whole bunch of YouTube videos of children speaking out, just like Pranav. So when children go to this page, they can watch these videos and see that they're not the only ones. There are many children in this situation. Some of them speak out. Here's the video that we just watched. Obviously, if you are a child and you're watching this, you need to be really careful, placing a video like this on YouTube. Only do it when you feel it's safe, and only do it when you feel like there's not going to be any dangerous consequences to that. Okay, so that's just a little message out there, but I put them out there for you all so you can see that there are many, many children in this situation, and obviously we need to all stop this. So I ended all of this with a message of hope to let the children know that we are all working on this as protective mothers to try and change this and stop this, and to get into action to change this corruption in the family court system. And let's talk about that in the 20 minutes that we have left, Radhika.
Yes.
What's the call to action?
So in my case, to put out a call for action, as much as we are familiar with kids being taken away when abuse is reported, my case is one of the worst case scenarios where there was no pretense of even giving due process. And the worst part right now is there's no hope for me to when I'm going to see my children. Because the way the judgment is, the only requirement was I have to have some sort of psychological therapy and submit a document, which I did. And she set it up for a contradictory hearing. What that means is the power is still in the law, in the excess lawyer and the judge. All the excess lawyer would have to say is, I don't believe this has helped her. So there's this, they're asking me to get a therapy for their disorder that doesn't exist. So there is no hope as it sounds right now, as it means, unless some judge decides to be actually a judge and help me get in touch with my children. As it sounds, we don't have a plan. So that makes my case really bad in the sense that now I don't have a day to look forward to.
Well, one of the things that you could do is write a complaint about what has happened in court and how the way you have been railroaded, and attach the evidence of it. And I'll share my screen here. You can file complaints with the Department of Justice. You can file complaints on the federal level. You can also file complaints on Supreme Court level with the Supreme Court Review Board, with the Federal Court Review Board. I highly recommend that the moms do this. And as they do this, also explain, bring in the research about the ACEs, the Adverse Child Experiences, and how adverse childhood experiences play out as the children get older. This is extremely important. You need to back up what you're saying with research that's actually been produced by the Department of Justice. Well,
it does require a little bit of knowledge and also expertise to write this. I did put out as many complaints as I could. Some of them actually led to good places. The outcomes may not be what I wanted directly, but with the very high level, I got it. I can't somehow, because of the confidentiality agreements and rules, I cannot discuss about it. But what I would like to emphasize here in a plan of action or call for action is if you're a victim, don't sit back and take it. This reminds me of a little story my dad always used to tell me that growing up is you can break a single stick. If you put them together and make it into 10 sticks, you can't break them. No one can break them so easily. So we should come together, and if we put out a call of action to stop this and work hard and not allow anybody to bully us, we can do it together. And Geerte, you have been an inspiration to me.
Well, thank you.
And they please take this not only for the face value but also beyond, as much as for someone like me who gives lectures for living. It's not easy to talk about my case. It took a lot of, it's almost been a year since these things have evolved in my life. And it took such long time for me to come out and accept that, I'm not afraid to talk about it. But I'm hoping that this will inspire other women to come together and we can do miracles. That said, about complaint writing, I did use this particular help with, if we can put out the Facebook page. She is an advocate that has helped in Shimoni case, and most of us know about Shimoni case. She has helped in that case and several other cases. She's very knowledgeable. She is a pure at heart advocate, so I would recommend her. Just talk to her and see how she can help you.
All right, let me share my screen here while I bring that page up that you were referring to. That's this page that I had up earlier.
Yeah, this is a grassroots advocacy group, and she is amazingly good at writing complaints about your lawyers, judges, psychologists, and whoever is playing a role in making it difficult for you to be in touch with your children. And further call to action, especially in my case, what I have seen, which I'm sure Geerte, you and everyone else can appreciate, is once you get into family court system and once things become so as difficult as they have, all of a sudden all the friends and families start dropping out from helping you. They don't even want to talk to you. It's funny. It almost looks like they look at you like you're a three-legged animal and they don't know what to do with you. The only message I have for them is we may look like three-legged animals right now, but we are still the same people, before this.
I think...
hello, are you okay? What can I do? Going for court watches. Don't let people go. I saw a Facebook message somewhere. Somebody says friends don't allow people go to family courts alone, which is very pertinent. I feel that don't allow women, if you have a woman struggling in family court, don't let them go alone. Be a court watcher. That's the least you can do. Just go watch. You don't have to do anything else. And another thing I've noticed is people are very easy to share if there is a simple, say, this dog needs a home. There's 2,000 shares. And then you say, oh, my child needs help. Nobody wants to share. It's a taboo to discuss that this family is going through a very difficult time and the children are being affected. I can understand where that comes from because you take it that it's the parents' responsibility to protect their children, and if they are fighting with each other, I don't know what to do. I can see that point, but at the end of the day, you see there's this dysfunctional parental equation, and it's been abused so much that one of those is in a bad situation. You should at least try to help.
These are not these so-called high conflict divorce cases as they are labeled in mainstream media, and that's why I started creating the show, doing the show about it. And another piece of advice I would give is for people to share the link to the shows. They are archived on CCN under the category Hell's for Children, and all the shows are on here. So all you need to do is just copy and paste this link and send it to someone who says, well, I can't believe this is happening to you. Share the link and people can watch hours and hours and hours of all these different cases. And these are not just mothers speaking. Barry Goldstein is an attorney, for example. There are also experts in the psychology fields and other advocates speaking in my shows on this topic and evidencing that what you are sharing, that your story is actually not an anomaly, but that like we said before, there's actually it's a scripted type of action that happens with these 82% of abusive fathers that get custody.
And the cottage industry behind it is so much money. I can tell you each one of these cases would have spent millions of dollars together.
Right,
Lots
exactly.
of money. We are talking about a lot of money that none of the players would want to not have. So it's in their best interest to continue this litigation.
Before we end the show, because we have about 5 more minutes left, I want to share with the audience the petition that they can sign about your case. So everybody, please sign this petition. We need to gather signatures. That would be a wonderful thing. Court watches. Another thing that you can do if you're in the academic field, like you and I are, is to speak to students about this, particularly students that are specializing in family law, or students that are into the topic of human trafficking. We need to educate the upcoming generation about judicial child trafficking, how it plays out, why it's happening, and to train and teach them to stay ethical in their professions as they move forward. Recognize what domestic violence by proxy is, recognize how domestic violence plays out in the judicial realm, and target it, identify it, and get rid of these attorneys that are fighting like this for these abusive fathers. We need to file massive complaints with the Bar Association against these horrific attorneys, cold-blooded child handlers. That's what they are. And keep filing complaints. And if you need help, thank you for sharing that website, that Facebook page. You can seek help from other mothers, other protective mothers who have gone through this, who have gone before us, and who can show us the way. And massively show up in these court watches, massively show up when judges go for election. And we know if they are abusive judges in the good old boy network, we need to massively go out there with victims and protest their elections. Those would be my points of action to kind of add on to the ones that you just mentioned. And we're going to keep following your case closely. I hope that this interview will help your case. I hope your children will watch it so they understand what happened, how it happened, and they have some more tools to get awareness and figure out what to do about it from their end, and empower themselves to get reunited with you and with your parents and with all your other family members, because these gross human rights violations must stop. And I'm glad the show inspired you to come out and share your story with the audience today. I hope it inspires other protective mothers to also step forward and share their cases. I think this is extremely important. I hope I can have, at some point about 50 cases, and we can start approaching documentary makers, mainstream media, to really take a look at this and see that this is not just a he said, she said, high conflict situation, but these are actually, this is torture perpetrated through
schemed. It's schemed, and in my story, I'm sure as many other stories, you can really go back to putting dates on the plot and say, this is where this was schemed, this was this scheme. Mine started with his arrest. He got arrested. He invited the judges and DA on the case to a party. He was found at a party with the judges and the DA right after the arrest. And I was found in contempt, over contempt, and then PAS came in. It's like that scheme that started from his arrest.
Yeah.
And he was arrested because of assaulting me at a restaurant. So it goes back to saying, yes, absolutely, this is not a fluke. This is not something, oh, one mistake a judge made. This is a prevalent epidemic almost in
It's
every part of
pandemic.
the country.
It's
Pandemic,
all,
you're right. It is
yeah.
pandemic. I hear Australia's case recently. It's pandemic, and it's more than 1 million children that are being trafficked through this.
Oh
Which
yeah, there's
I,
many
I
more than
can't
that.
believe it. If a toy hurts 5 children, there's an uproar. There's suing people. There's so much activity. A
Mm-hmm.
million kids.
Yep. I
That's
think
not
globally the number is even more. And you're right. Together we stand strong. They can break one stick, but they cannot break a bundle of sticks.
right.
So let's keep speaking out. Let's keep filing complaints and showing up at court watches. I want to thank you for coming on the show today and sharing this very personal story. I know it's difficult to do, so I very much respect your courageous and brave exposure today. Thank you so much. And
Thank you. And I would like to extend gratitude to you for doing this, and also a huge thanks to all the supporters for me. There's a few that have not given up all my life. And also, I'm very easy to be found online. I'm Googleable, like they would say. If anyone needs help, any sort of help that I can do, or if they want to investigate my story, get more information, I'm very easily accessible online. So thank you, Geerte. This was a good experience, and I hope this can be an inspiration for other women to come out and talk about it.
thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Take care.
And thank you so much for all my viewers for tuning in again to another episode of Hell's for Children. And I hope you join me again next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.